Everyone, welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 7th of October 2023। तो चलिए आज के इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल्स हिंदी न्यूज़पेपर से पहले वन बाय वन देख लेते हैं क्या क्या है। पहला जो है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट रिफ्यूजेस टू स्टे रिलीज ऑफ बिहार कास्ट सर्वे डाटा। बिहार में जो कास्ट बेसिस में जो सेंसस हुआ था, सर्वे हुआ था, तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में गया हुआ था। वहाँ पर जो स्टे लगाने के लिए बोल रहे थे, बट सुप्रीम कोर्ट रिफ्यूज कर दिया है वो डाटा को रिलीज ना करने के लिए, मना कर रहा है। मतलब रिलीज कर सकता है, बिहार रिलीज कर सकता है। देन सेकंड जो है, नोबेल पीस प्राइज 2023 गोज टू जेल्ड Iranian activist Narges Mohammadi। Then new Maldives president won't be anti-India or pro-China Nasid, ये पेज वन का है। देन एडिटोरियल का है, रेवेन्यू रिडल्स aligning higher education with the United Nations SDGs। Then NREGS runs out of funds, ministry seeks more budget, India to hold discussion with Canada during G20, then left-wing extremism will be totally eliminated in 2 years, according to Amit Shah. 2 out of 5 amphibians are facing extinction threat due to climate change study. Russia might pull back from nuclear test treaty. Then last जो है, RBI flags inflation risk to stability। तो चलिए वन बाय वन देखते हैं। पहला जो है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट रिफ्यूजेस टू स्टे रिलीज ऑफ बिहार कास्ट सर्वे डाटा। The Supreme Court of on Friday refused to stay the Bihar government from publishing data collected from its caste-based survey. The bench headed by Justice Sanjay Khanna refused to be bothered by the fact that the state had released the data when petition challenging the legality of the survey was pending before the Supreme Court. You cannot stop a state government or any government from taking a decision. Yes, if there is an issue with regard to the data, that will be considered. Justice Khanna addressed the petitioner. The bench posted the case for the next hearing in January 2024 file, issuing notice to the state to file its response to the petition. Unlawfully collected. The main issue here is that the data was collected unlawfully and cannot be acted upon. Advocate Aparajita Singh, who led the petitioner's side, argued, "You will be in some difficulty on that. We have read the Patna High Court judgment, while upheld the survey and made a prima facie view. The High Court judgment is fairly detailed," Justice Khanna observed. Justice Khanna said the cardinal issue was how much breakdown of data would be made available to the general public for the sake of transparency. The court further dismissed the notion that the compilation and publication of data affects privacy. Privacy is not an issue as names, etc. are not published, Justice Khanna orally remarked. Mr. Singh persisted that the court should order status quo as the status should publish more data by the next hearing in January. We are not saying this at the moment, Justice Khanna replied. Though at one point asking Mr. Diwan why the state had published the data when the case was still pending. Senior advocate Syam Diwan for Bihar said the petition were at a pre-admission stage when the court was still deciding whether or not to issue formal notice. He said the data received was extensive and voluntary from the people and need to be analyzed in details to help identify welfare areas. The next जो है, earlier the Supreme Court had refused to stay the uploading of data collected in the caste-based survey. The Bihar government has argued that the exercise was a social survey. The Patna High Court on August 1 has upheld the legality of the survey. The petitioner had argued that Bihar had no authority to conduct such a survey, which was an attempt to usurp the powers of the center. The Union government had maintained that only the center and no other body was entitled to conduct either census or any action akin to census. In its reply, the Supreme Court on the Bihar government's caste-based survey, The affidavit said the center was committed to take all affirmative actions for the upliftment of SC, STs and SCBCs and OBC in accordance with the constitution and the applicable law. The next जो है नोबेल पीस प्राइज 2023 goes to jail Iranian activist Narges Mohammadi. Imprisoned Iranian activist Narges Mohammadi won the Nobel Peace Prize on Friday in recognition of her tireless campaigning for women's rights and democracy and against the death penalty. Mrs. Mohammadi, 51, has kept up her activism despite numerous arrests by the Iranian authorities and spending years behind bars. She has remained a leading light for nationwide women-led protests sparked by the death last year of 22-year-old woman in police custody. This prize is first and foremost a recognition of the very important work of the whole movement in Iran with its undisputed leader Narges Mohammadi, said Berit Reis Anderson, the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, who announced the prize in Oslo. She said the committee hopes the prize is an encouragement to continue the work in whichever from this movement finds to be fitting. She also urged Iran to release Mrs. Mohammadi in time for prize ceremony on December 10. In a statement to the New York Times, Mrs. Mohammadi said the global support and recognition of my human rights advocacy makes me more resolved, more responsible, more passionate, and more hopeful. Victory is near. I also hope this recognition makes Iranian protesting for change stronger and more organized. She added, victory is near. Mrs. Mohammadi, an engineer by training, has been imprisoned 13 times and convicted 5 times, according to Mrs. Reis Anderson. In total, she has been sentenced to 31 years in prison. Her most recent incarceration began when she was detained in 2021 after attending a memorial for a person killed in protest sparked by an increase in gasoline prices. She has been held at Tehran's Evin prison. Her brother Hamidreza Mohammad said he has not been in touch with his sister but that the prize means a lot to her. Mrs. Mohammadi is the ninth woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize and second Iranian woman after human rights activist Shirin Ebadi won the award in 2003. Rights campaigner and 2023 Nobel Peace Laureate Narges Mohammadi said in a September interview that she retained hope for change in Iran despite having no prospect of release from prison and enduring the pain of separation from her family. In the interview where Mrs. Mohammadi gave written answer to AFP from Evin prison in Tehran, she insisted the protest movement that erupted 1 year ago in Iran against the Islamic Republicans is still alive. First arrested 20 years ago, Mrs. Mohammadi 51 has spent much of the past 2 decades in and out of the jail over her unstinting campaigning for human rights in Iran. She has most recently been incarcerated since November 2021 and has not seen her children for 8 years. While she could only witness from behind bars, the protest that broke out following the death of September 16, 2022 of Mas Mahsa Amini, who had been arrested for violating Iran's strict dress rule for women. She said the movement made clear the levels of dissatisfaction in society, noting that Iran had, even before September 2022, seen repeated protest outbreaks. She added, we have seen cycles of protest in recent years and this shows the irreversible nature of the situation and the scope for the expansion of the protests. She said after 44 years of oppression, discrimination, and continuous repression of the government against women, the protest had accelerated the process of realizing democracy, freedom, and equality in Iran. Mrs. Mohammadi said the protest has involved people beyond urban areas and educated classes. The weakening of the religious element has created a vacuum that the government has not been able to fill with other economic and social factors as the government is essentially ineffective and corrupt. Then next, a new Maldives president won't be anti-India and pro-China. Nasir. The new Maldives president-elect transition team hopes to invite Prime Minister Narendra Modi into the swearing-in ceremony of Mohammad Moizu in Malay next month, says Maldives Speaker and former President Mohammad Nasir. In an interview to the Hindu, Mr. Nasir, who has broken away from outgoing President Ibu Suli and his Maldivian Democratic Party to form his own party, which could join the incoming government, said that he would also send an invitation to Mr. Modi for the ceremony expected to be held on November 17. He stressed his belief that the new Maldivian president would not be anti-India or pro-China as he has generally been portrayed in recent commentary. Mr. Modi had attended Mr. Suli's swearing-in ceremony in 2018, a rare gesture that he has not made for any other leader in the neighborhood thus far. Dr. Moizu, the former mayor of the Malay who campaigned on a sovereignty plank in the election, had served in the Yemen government as Minister for Housing 2013 to 18 and was responsible for many of the infrastructure projects that the Chinese campaign on at the time, leading to the impression that he will follow the policies that had earlier strained ties with India. The international media has characterized our election as between India and China and also characterized Mr. Dr. Moizu as pro-China. I don't think all this was exactly true, Mr. Nasir said, claiming that the India Out campaign started by the Progressive Party of Maldives (PPM), which is part of ruling coalition, was not the main election issue. Anti-incumbency was the chief reason for the MDP's loss in the presidential runoff poll held last Saturday, the former president said. The campaign against Indian military presence here has subsided, and that really was not the main campaign point. My feeling is that he will continue with our foreign policy. He would know that the relation with India go back hundreds of years, and I cannot see much changing because of the change in government. Mr. Nasir said when asked the comment on Dr. Moizu's statement at a public rally this week that the people had voted against foreign troops. He indicated that the president-elect may allow approximately 75 Indian military personnel sanctioned in the Maldives to stay and help maintain and operate the helicopters and Dornier aircraft gifted by India. Then editorial का portion है revenue riddles. देख लेते हैं. Halfway through the financial year, India's gross revenue from the goods and services tax (GST) stand at over 9.92 lakh crore rupees, making an 11.1% increase over collection between April and September 2022. The average monthly revenue in 2023 and 24 are a healthy 1,65,480 crore rupees, with four of the six occasions that the GST PT has crossed 1.6 lakh crore occurring in this fiscal. At almost 1.63 lakh crore, September GST collection were at a tad below the average but 2.3% over August inflows that had marked a 3-month low, with the festive season kicking in. Collection over 1.6 lakh crore may persist, though through this quarter, the government appears comfortably placed regarding GST revenues in the fiscal context, with the room to spare for some moderation in inflows during the January-March 2024 quarter when the central bank expects real GDP growth to slow to 5.7% from 7.8% in the first quarter. Beyond the macro resiliency that these numbers indicate, a few areas of concern that deserve a closer scrutiny from the policymakers and GST Council, which converge today. One, there is a discernible slowdown in the growth of GST inflows, which dropped to 10.2% in September, the slowest uptake since July 2021. The average growth between July and September dipped to 10.6% in the second quarter from 11.5% in the first. Growth from domestic transactions and services imports has slowed to 14% over the past 2 months, from 18% in July. It is important to note that revenues in September based on transactions undertaken in August also include pending dues from businesses since the start of the GST regime in 2017-18 is the deadline to remit them was September 30. Moreover, e-invoicing became mandatory for all firms with a turnover of over 5 crore rupees since August 1. So there was another compliance push at work. Distilling these effects is necessary to gauge the extent of growth that stemmed from actual consumption and production uptake. That a record of 9.34 crore EUA bill generated during August did not translate into the highest ever revenues may suggest that transaction size have shrunk. For instance, another puzzling trend is seen in revenues from goods import that have shrunk 4 times this year. So of course, the lower goods import bill recorded this year will reflect in lower GST intake. However, imports hit a 9-month high of 58.6 billion in August, 10.75% over July's import bill. Yet revenues collected in September were 5.7% below the previous month's sticky. This does not add up. Authorities must dig deeper to check for revenue leakages from imports. Aligning higher education with the United Nations SDG. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a set of 17 goals with 169 targets that all 193 United Nations member states have agreed to try to achieve by 2030. SDGs are a matter of urgency and action by all countries, both developed and developing, and to end poverty and socio-economic and environmental problems should align with strategies that improve the standard of life and education, reduce inequality, and harness economic growth. Though it has been 8 years since the inception of these goals, the SDGs report 2023 flagged slow progress and painted a grim picture due to the prolonged effects of COVID-19, impacts of the climate crisis, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the lack of progress towards the growth is a universal experience, but it has been more pronounced in the least developed countries. India, despite having managed the crisis of the global economy and relatively succeeded in overcoming the challenges posed by pandemic, has suffered a setback in achieving these goals. NEP 2020 and SDGs. Yet recent actions and policies indicate that India is committed towards releasing SDGs. SDG 4 pertain to access the quality of education. It is a prerequisite for the achievement of other goals. India, with a long-standing history of equitable and inclusive education, has accelerated efforts to ensure the achievement of SDGs through various reforms. Among them, the National Education Policy (NEP 2020) should be given credit to a great extent. NEP 2020 has been prepared to in tune with most of the SDGs, though NEP 2020 calls for changes at all levels of education. Priority should be accorded to higher education as it accelerates social mobility, empowers people proves creativity and critical thinking and grants them employment skills. According to data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD), people with a higher education degree are more employable and earn an average of 54% more than those who only have completed senior secondary education. A university inclusive education thus better protects people against poverty. SDG 1 prevents them from hunger. SDG 2 support them for good health and well-being. SDG 3 promote gender equality. SDG 5 provides them decent work, which in turn drives economic growth. SDG 8 and reduces inequality. SDG 10 universities should strengthen the research teaching nexus in university education. That way, students will become direct benefactors of the knowledge generated from research. Multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary system of education produce multi-talented people who can pursue research and find innovative solutions to global challenges such as affordable and clean energy. SDG 7 sustainable cities and communities. SDG 11 climate change and global warming. SDG 13 as well as studying their impact on an economy and the earth. Sustainable development is possible only if we radically change the way we produce and consume. SDG 12 innovative solution and a startup. SDG 9 must be developed in collaboration with private companies. Introducing value-based education (VBE) will help citizens become responsible towards a self society and the planet, and help our nation achieve life on land. SDG 15 suggestion and concluding remarks. NEP 2020 demands that Indian higher education be committed to mapping its day-to-day operation with SDGs, ranking university according to the achievement of SDG is a welcome move, but is still inadequate to meet the SDG deadline. To accelerate the progress towards achieving 2030 agenda. Stakeholders of the higher education should be educated and oriented so that none of the activities leave any SDG behind. The 56,205 higher education institutions and universities in India should work together. Universities should come out reinvigorated and play a part in the education, innovation, culture, and civic life of their local communities. Community health, energy saving measures, efficient resource allocation, waste reduction, development of local skill, as well as the sharing of services, infrastructure, and facilities with other universities and external partners should become a culture in university. It is high time that universities adopted sustainability as a mantra and incorporated SDGs into their institutional strategies, both in Delhi and administration and in teaching and research. It has been realized that higher education cannot work in isolation. Rather, it must be directly integrated with socio-economic development, where each activity and a transaction has meaningful and multiple impacts on SDGs. Every citizen must feel that the universities contribute directly to their well-being and nation building. MGNREGS runs out of funds. Ministry seeks more budget. 6 months into the financial year, the flagship rural employment program, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme (MGNREGS), has run out of funds. As per the statistics put out by the ministry on its website, it is running a deficit of 6,146.93 crore rupees. An amount of 60,000 crore was sanctioned for the scheme for 2023-24, which was 18% lower than the 73,000 crore budget estimates and 33% lower than 89,000 crore rupees revised estimate for the financial year 2022 and 23. According to sources on September 15, the Ministry of Rural Development (MORD) had approved. The finance ministry is asking for a supplementary budget of 23,000 crore. Finance Ministry Nirmala Sitharaman has stated that the MGNREGS is a demand-driven scheme and a supplementary budget will be made available whenever the need arises. In a statement on Thursday, the MORD has reiterated that this point the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act (MGNREGA) is a demand-driven wage employment program and fund releases to state union territories is a continuous progress and the central government is making funds available keeping in view the demand for the work. In further explains the process of release of funds to the state and union territory which it is said is on the basis of the agreed labor budget opening balance pending liabilities of the previous year if any and the overall performance the ministry seeks additional funds for MGNREGA as and when required for meeting the demand for work on the ground. It is stated the ministry quoting from the statistics till October 4 said that out of the sanctioned 60,000 crore rupees, 56,105.69 crore of 93.5% of the fund had been released to the states, though the ministry statistical report 7.1.1 available on the website shows a deficit of 6,146 crore rupees. Several questions texted to Rural Development Secretary Satish Kumar Singh went unanswered. Same story. This is a story that repeats each year without fail. Every year there is a budget cuts, and we are told that the MGNREGA is demand-driven schemes. A supplementary budget, usually insufficient, is approved only by the winter season. Said Lavanya Tamang, a researcher with Liptech. This cycle adversely impact the functioning of the scheme while the balance sheets may look at all right at the end of the year as the available fund dip the way due to pile up and the work allocation goes down, she added. India to hold discussion with Canada during G20 Parliament Speakers Meet. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla on Friday said that the India will raise all issues with the Canadian Speaker of the Senate during the upcoming Parliament 20 meeting of the G20 nations presiding officers in the Delhi next week. Mr. Birla made these remarks while briefing reporters about the ninth Parliamentary Speaker Summit P20 of G20 nations. He was asked if he would raise the issue of the Canada Parliament being used to make allegations against India with the Speaker of Canada's Senate, Ray Monday informal talks. We will discuss issues that have been listed for the summit. Other issues will be discussed informally. Mr. Birla responded. India's relation with the Canada have hit a new low after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau linked Indian agents to killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar and raised the matter in the House of Commons. Mr. Birla said that the presiding officer of 25 countries and 10 deputy speakers from the G20 member nations and individual invitees countries are expected to attend the summit. It will be held at the newly inaugurated India International Convention and Expo Center, Yashobhumi, in Delhi from October 12 to 14. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the summit on October 13. More than 350 delegates are expected to attend the three-day summit that will see the participation of 50 member of parliament, 14 general secretaries, 26 vice president and the International Parliamentary Union president and the president of the Pan-African Parliament. The main theme of the ninth P20 is proposed to be parliaments for one earth, one family, one future. The Lok Sabha Speaker said sustainable growth. He said that the P20 summit will have sessions on transformation in people's lives through public digital platforms, women-led development, accelerating sustainable development goals and sustainable energy transitions. A pre-summit event, namely Parliament Forum of Lifestyle for Environment, will be held on October 12 at Yashobhumi. An exhibition titled Mother of Democracy will also be organized to highlight India's ancient and participative democratic tradition, Mr. Billa said. Left-wing extremism will be left-wing extremism will be eliminated in 2 years, says Amit Shah. Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Friday said left-wing extremism will be totally eliminated from the country in 2 years and stressed the need for constant surveillance in the areas freed from Naxal so that the problem does not revive there again. Chairing a meeting to review the security situation in the LWE affects the states, Mr. Shah said the Modi government has adopted a policy of zero tolerance against left-wing extremism since 2014. He said in 2022 saw the lowest level of LWE violence and death in the last 4 decades. Left-wing extremism will be totally eliminated from the country in 2 years, he said, adding nationalism is a curse to the humanity and we are resolved to uproot it in all its forms. The meeting was attended by the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh and Jharkhand. Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis also attended the meeting where Odisha, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh were represented by the state ministers. Maharashtra Chief Minister Eknath Shinde said the face of Naxal affected areas in the state was changing for the better due to development schemes. Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren also advocated continued deployment of parliamentary forces to the battle problems. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Y.S. Jagannath Reddy affirmed that left-wing extremism is on the wane and Maoist activities are confined only to a few pockets. Shrinking areas, he said areas have been shrinking since 2019 as 195 new camps of the Central Armed Police Forces have been established while 44 more new ones will be set up. Mr. Shah said the deployment of CAPFs against LWE rationalization of the development of and setting of camps in vacuum areas are the priority of the government. He said there has been a decline of more than 52% in LWE related violence, 69% in death, 72% in security force personnel death and 68% in civilian death between 2014 and 23 compared to 2005 and 14, 5 to 14. Then next जो है टू आउट ऑफ 2 out of 5 amphibians are facing extinction threat due to climate change. A newspaper analysis analyzing 2 decades of data from around the world has found that climate change is emerging as one of the biggest threats to frogs, salamanders, and caecilians. The study titled Ongoing Declines for the World's Amphibians in the Face of Emerging Threats was published on October 4 in the scientific journal Nature. The study is based on the second global amphibian assessment coordinated by the Amphibian Red List Authority, a branch of amphibian specialist group of the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Species Survival Commission and managed by RE Wild, a wildlife conservation group. The assessment evaluated the extinction risk of more than 8,000 amphibian species from all over the world, including 2,286 species evaluated for the first time. More than 1,000 experts across the globe, including scientists and researchers from Assam-based biodiversity conservation organization Aranyaka and other Indian institutions contributed their data and expertise. The data revealed that 2 out of every 5 amphibians are threatened with extinction. These data will be published on the IUCN Red List of threatened species between 2004 and 22. A few critical threats have pushed more than 300 amphibians closer to extinction. According to the study, climate change was the preliminary threat for the 39% of these species. These numbers is expected to rise as a better data and a projection on species responses to climate change because become available. Climate change is especially concerning for amphibians in large part of because they are particularly sensitive to changes in their environment, the study said. As human drive changes in climate and to habitat, amphibians are becoming climate captives, unable to move very far to escape the climate change induced increase in the frequency and intensity of the extreme heat, wildfires, drought and hurricanes. Jennifer Lutke Standby Rewild's manager of the species partnership said he habitat destruction and degradation affect 93% of all threatened amphibian species. The authors pointed out while underlying the importance of expanded habitat of and corridor protection in the places important for biodiversity. Then next, Russia might pull back from nuclear test treaty. Russian lawmakers will consider revoking the ratification of a global nuclear test ban, the parliament speaker said on Friday. The statement from Vasyslav Volodin, the speaker of the lower house, the State Duma, followed Russian President Vladimir Putin's warning that Moscow could consider the rekindling residing the ratification of the international pact banning nuclear tests since the United States has never ratified it. There are widespread concerns that Russia could move to resume nuclear tests to try discourage the West from continuing to offer military support to Ukraine. Many Russian hawks have spoken in favor of resuming the test. Mr. Volodin reaffirmed Moscow's claim that Western military support for Ukraine means the US and its allies are engaged in the conflict. He said that senior lawmakers will discuss recalling the 2000 ratification of nuclear test ban at the next meeting of the House Council. The speaking Thursday at a forum with foreign affairs experts, Putin noted the United States has signed but not ratified the 1996 comprehensive nuclear test ban, while Russia has signed and ratified it. The next जो है RBI flags inflation risk to stability. RBI flags inflation risk to stability. The Reserve Bank of India views high inflation as a major risk to macroeconomic stability and sustainable growth, and accordingly, monetary policy has been focused on aligning inflation to 4% target on a durable basis. RBI Governor Satyakant Das said on Friday as he announced the Monetary Policy Committee's discussion to keep the policy repo rate unchanged at 6.50%. Elaborating on the NPC's rationale for leaving interest rate unchanged for a fourth state meeting. He said a silver lining of declining core inflation, notwithstanding the overall inflation outlook was clouded by the uncertainties that included the fall in Kharif sowing for the key crops like pulses and oilseeds, low reservoir levels and volatile global food and energy prices. Alert ready to act, asserting that the asserting that the NPC remained alert and prepared to undertake timely policy measures to align inflation to the target and anchor inflation expectations. He observed that headwinds from geopolitical tensions and geoeconomic fragmentations, volatility in the global financial markets, global economic slowdown, and the uneven distribution of monsoon rains posed a risk to the outlook. The RBI also retained its real GDP growth forecast for 2023-24 at 6.5% and its forecast for average CPI inflation for the current fiscal year at 5.4%. The NPC, however, raised its headline inflation projection for the second quarter that ended on September 30 by 20 basis points to 6.4%. I would like to emphatically reiterate that our inflation target is 4% and not 2 to 6%. Mr. Das stressed later adding monetary policy would remain actively anti-inflationary at the current juncture. तो नेक्स्ट जो है वो आर्टिकल है आरबीआई नॉट वरीड अबाउट द सेंटर्स ऑफ फाइनेंशियल हेल्थ according to Satikandas and RBI holding key rate on expected line according to IBA. Despite spending picking up and is set to gain further momentum, the Reserve Bank of India is not worried about the center's financial health, said RBI Governor Shaktikant Das on Friday. The government has a fiscal consolidation path which they have announced in last union budget. There was fiscal expansion during COVID, but the overall expansion that India undertook in the fiscal was very calibrated and targeted, Mr. Das said while answering a question from The Hindu. The centre's fiscal deficit hit 36% of its annual target in the first 5 months of the current fiscal, up from 32.6% during the same period the last fiscal. The Reserve Bank, then next is the Reserve Bank of India's decision to hold the key rate is on expected lines, said A.K. Goel, Chairman, Indian Bank Association, IBA and MD and CEO, Punjab National Bank. Softening the core inflation to 4.9% during July-August 2023 would have given comfort to the RBI for keeping the status quo on its retail inflation projection for financial year 2024. He said, it has also been highlighted the aim of the RBI is bring the inflation to 4%, emphasizing the focus of RBI is still on managing inflation at the comfort zone. He added, inflation seemed to have peaked and a correction in prices over the near term looks probable, said, said Subhrakant Pondas, President of Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry (FICCI). In line with the Monetary Policy Committee's observation on recurring food price shocks impacting inflation, FICCI reiterates de-risking food supply chains from weather weather-related disruption must be a priority, he said. The RBI is vigilant on inflation and ready to act if required, said Jarin Daruwala, Cluster CEO, Standard Chartered Bank. नेक्स्ट जो है ये प्राइम मिनिस्टर के द्वारा लिखा गया है, इसलिए थोड़ा मैं एम्फासिस करके इसे लाल ले आया हूँ. प्रोफेसर Swaminathan's contribution will continue to inspire and guide us. A few days ago, we lost Professor M.S. Swaminathan. Our nation lost a visionary who revolutionized agricultural science, a stalwart whose contribution to India will always be etched in golden letters. Professor Swaminathan loved India and wanted our nation and our farmers in particular to lead a life of prosperity. Academically brilliant, he could have chosen any career, but he was so impacted by the Bengal famine of 1943 that he was clear that if there is one thing he would do, it would be to study agriculture. At a relatively young age, he came in contact with Dr. Norman Borlaug and followed his work in great details. In the 1950s, he was offered a faculty position in the US, but he rejected it because he wanted to work in India and for India. I want you all to think about the challenging circumstances in which he stood as apologist, guiding our nation toward the path of self-sufficiency and self-confidence. In the first 2 decades since independence, we were dealing with immense challenges, and one of them was food shortage. In the early 1960s, India was grappling with the ominous shadow of the famine, and it is then that Professor Swaminathan's unyielding commitment and foresights ushered a new era of agricultural prosperity. His pioneering work in agriculture and specific sector like wheat breeding led to a significant increase in wheat production, thus turning India from a food deficient country into a self-sufficient nation. This tremendous achievement earned him the well-deserved title of Father of the Indian Green Revolution, pioneering research. The Green Revolution offered a glimpse of India's can-do spirit that if we have a billion challenges, we also have a billion minds with the flame of innovation to overcome those challenges. 5 decades after the Green Revolution began, Indian agriculture has become far more modern and progressive, but the very foundation laid by Professor Swaminathan can never be forgotten. Over the years, he undertook pioneering research in combating parasites affecting potato crops. His research also enabled potato crops to withstand cold weather. Today, world is talking about millets or Sri Anna as a superfood, but Professor Swaminathan had encouraged discourse around millets since 1990s. My personal interaction with Professor Swaminathan were extensive. They began after I took over as Chief Minister of Gujarat in 2001. During those days, Gujarat was not known for its agricultural prowess. Successive droughts, a super cyclone, and an earthquake had impacted the growth trajectory of the state. Among the many initiatives we launched was the soil health card, which enabled us to understand the soil better and address problems if they arose. It was in the context of this scheme that I met Professor Swaminathan. He appreciated the scheme and also shared his valuable inputs for the same. His endorsement was enough to convince those who were skeptical about the scheme, which would eventually set the stage for Gujarat's agricultural success. Our interaction continued during my chief ministerial tenure, and also when I took over as a prime minister. I met him at the International Agro Biodiversity Congress in 2016, and in 2017 I launched a two-part book series written by him. The Ural describes a farmer as the pin that holds the world together because it is the farmer who sustains everyone. Professor Swaminathan understood this principle very well. A lot of people call him a Krishi Vaigyanik as agricultural scientist, but I have always believed that he was even more. He was a true Kisan Vaigyanik, a farmer scientist. In his heart, there was a farmer. The, the success of his work is not restricted to their academic excellence. It lies in the impact they have had outside the laboratories, in the farm and the fields. His work narrowed the gap between scientific knowledge and its practical application. He is consistently advocated for sustainable agriculture, emphasizing the delicate balance between human advancement and ecological sustainability. Here I must also note Professor Swaminathan's special emphasis on improving the lives of the small farmers and ensuring they also enjoy the fruits of innovation. He was particularly passionate about improving the lives of women farmers. Innovation and mentorship There is another aspect about Professor M.S. Swaminathan which is remarkable. He stands tall as a paragon of innovation and mentorship. When he won the World Food Prize in 1987, the first recipient of this prestigious honor, he used the prize money to establish a non-for-profit research foundation. Till date, it undertakes extensive work across various sectors. He has nurtured countless minds, instilling in them a passion for learning and innovation. In a rapidly changing world, his life reminds us of the enduring power of the knowledge, mentorship, and innovation. He was an institution builder as well. Having to his credit, many centers where vibrant research takes place. One of his stints was as a director International Rice Research Institute, Manila, the South Asia Regional Center of International Rice Research Institute was opened in Varanasi in 2018. I will again cite the Ural to pay tribute to the Professor Swaminathan. It is written there, if those who have planned have harmless, they will attain what they have desired the way they have desired. Here was a stalwart who decided early on his life that he wants to strengthen agriculture and serve farmers, and he did it exceptionally, innovatively, and passionately. Professor Swaminathan's contributions continue to inspire and guide us as we navigate the path of agriculture, innovation, and sustainability. We must also keep reaffirming our commitment to the principle he held dear, championing the cause of farmers and ensuring the fruits of scientific innovations reach the roots of our agricultural expansion, fostering growth, sustainability, and prosperity for the generations to come. So, friends, this is all for today, and we will meet from tomorrow onwards with new news analysis from the Hindu newspaper. So, thank you. Thanks all.